In respect of women's movement, the newly installed oppressive regime has set out to systematically remove women from all spheres of social life, remove female ministers from government cabinet, gender segregation in universities, imposition of Arabic culture and race, Arabic hijab, the closure of girls' school. They announced that the Independence Bureau of Administrative Reform should give to any free they announced that the Independence Bureau of Administrative Reform should give 20 free points to men in open competition with women to attract men to government position, while women in high-ranking government position are forced to resign, and all first, second, and third government position are monopolized for men. The new order has resort to brutal suppression to silence the voice of women across Afghanistan through locking them up underground, shooting at them, treating them with weapons, paper spraying and flagging them, arresting rally organizer, and issuing calls for the arrest of protester on March Day, torturing and ill-treating them in various ways while in detention, including with electric shocks, transferring them to unknown places of pursuing them into their home, having disappeared them for public space, monitoring their social media accounts, intimidating and treating those involved with human rights activism, targeted killings of those human rights activists that persist, cracking down on demonstrated journalism, particularly those attempting to cover demonstration and realize right through to the ever-present trait of torture, imprisonment of being disappeared. But rest assured that what is shown in the media represent just a small part of the crimes and representation this fundamentalism monopolist carry out against us. The people of Afghanistan are tired after a 14 years long war, but there is a deep-seated hatred amongst the majority of them towards the Taliban, who are severely interfering in the individual freedoms of the people and making it difficult for them to even breathe. What the Taliban represent is not just Islamic fundamentalism, but a mixture of Islamic fundamentalism with a particular brand of conservative tribal culture and highly patriarchal traditions originating in the areas for which the Taliban emerged. This is what makes the Taliban particularly dangerous to women and completely opposite to women's interests. I would like to remind you that the Taliban of today are no different from those of the Black era of 20 years ago. The only difference is that they know how a better understanding of branding and politics, and they are prepared to deceive, lie, and seek recognition so as not legitimate be isolated from the world. They are disappeared from global legitimacy and are ostensibly trying to show their commitment to the Doha Agreement. that is why they suppress the opposition and prevent journalism from covering the real news on the ground in the country. In doing so, they attempt to prevent their mask from sleeping and their true identity and nature from being revealed. Therefore, on behalf of the spontaneous independent women's movement in Afghanistan, I urge to counterparts in Britain and around the world, all human rights and women's rights activists as well as all active and knowledgeable people in the fight against terrorism and drug, the main source of the income of the Taliban in recent years. To draw upon their power, resource, and resolve to push these issues until the Taliban are forced to form an inclusive government in which women are granted a dignified position and full right. This include, but are not limited to, the right to equal education, to equal employment, equal opportunities in all social and labor sectors, the right to political participation and to leadership levels, including the lifting of the ban on women in high government position, the re-establishment of the Ministry of Women Affairs, freedom of choice of profession, freedom of field of study, prohibition of forced marriage and the jihad marriage, freedom of expression of as well as other values in sharing in international treaties and conventions to which the government of Afghanistan has signed up, those for such as the Convention on the Elimination of Violence against Women, the UN Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And until the government in Afghanistan embraces all of these values of you must stand with the women of Afghanistan. No legitimacy or recognition should be given to the fundamentalism, monopoly system of monoethnic, mono-religious, and monogender. The previous Afghanistan government was marred in corruption, but the young generation of Afghanistan, who make up 65% of the population, were raised and schooled under the system and the constitutional values it propagate. It was one of the most democratic constitute in the entire region. We grew up and learned to read and judge the world from this perspective. The rising of such a generation was one of the greatest achievements. This must not be destroyed like the achievement in the training and equipment of the Afghan army over the past 20 years were so easily destroyed.